Okay, we've got Mark hopefully 6 miles away, waiting for me to call him on this Moonraker Minor Mk1, the early version from about 1987. So, Tango 21 calling ZX2, do you copy? Yeah, we're only just picking you up on this Moonraker. Squelch is a bit harsh on it, I've noticed this when I was servicing it. Do you copy me over?
Just Richard, it's so quiet, it's unbelievable.
Okay, well, it was set up correctly, the deviation is there, so it's really quiet rather than just a low signal over.
Yeah, I can just about see it really is quiet.
Just 1 second, I'm just going to flick down to a 20 and just listen on the other radio. Tango 21, testing 1 2 3. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Right, well, one of the problems I had when I set this up, Mark, was that the kind of the way the transmitted audio is, if you use the little signal generator we use into the microphone, it reads very, very low. And then if you whistle into the microphone, it's too high. It's very difficult to set a compromise. So if I talk louder, it probably is louder.
I can hardly hear you when you're speaking normally. I've had to pull up because I cannot hear you.
So basically, the transmitted audio is abysmal.
It is abysmal, yeah. I've had to pull up because I can't understand you. It's just too quiet.
Okay, did you hear me at all at the scratchy corner point over? Okay, right, well, this is one of those radios that might work better with a power mic.
Yeah, I can hear you for pull up, but once it's travelling, it's just nothing.
Okay, well, if you come back towards me and we'll see how we go. It should get better as you get closer over.
Yeah, definitely a power mic anyway. Definitely sounds better. But we know they're not brilliant radios anyway.
Yes, and I'll say once again, this is the Moonraker Minor Mk1, and no, it isn't a brilliant radio. It isn't technically, and it isn't on this performance test, but it isn't to be reflected on how the current models from Moonraker are. We've tested one of their recent models, and it worked very well indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different test, isn't it? They've got a Moonraker badge on it anyway, because it's a variant of a Euro Photonic 3 as well, and something else as well. So I don't know originally imported the chassis. But yeah, really is quiet. I'm going to have to stick my ear down to the speakers so I can hear you.
Roger on that. Well, what you need is a radio with a forward-facing speaker.
Well, yeah. Well, I've got the speaker towards me. I mean, it's to my ear, but the mod's just so quiet on that radio. I could do with an extension speaker sat next to my ear.
Okay, Roger. As I say, when I did the test, I noticed that the way the deviation was has very poor automatic gain control, and I could, if I did a whistle test, it was well over the top. So it just goes to show. Right, whereabouts are you over?
Oh, it's okay. I've just gone over the railway crossing.
Okay, so you're coming into the village of Wilsford, so this shall be the scratchiest point over.
I'm just coming into Wilson just now.
Now, initially I wasn't able to receive you on this radio, which is why I called you from a different one from the house, and that is because the squelch is so vicious on this radio.
I could hear you, but very quiet. I was obviously pulled up, no engine running. Yeah, what's the one in the front of him? Oh, right, okay. Yeah, it's perfectly fine on that one. It's good audio as well, but no, not on this set.
And when we've done this test, I will just put it back on the test set and make sure that it's still set as it was supposed to be set.
Yeah, that might be a good idea actually, just to see where it is. It might just want to turn it up a little bit more, really. Yes, let's just see how we go with that one.
This is one I made out of a scrap chassis. That doesn't. I don't want you to think that it's not going to work properly, because I wouldn't let it go if it wasn't working properly. But you're right. How does another one perform that's also supposed to be working properly? We do have one somewhere.
It's just to see what the tolerance is. That's what I was getting at between the two different sets. Whether it's a particular batch that wasn't brilliant and it got corrected on a subsequent batch, you know. That's where I was getting at.
The other side of this is I'm using a standard generic Altai type mic, which I use on all these kind of sets. I wonder if the factory original mic performs differently.
Yes, I can't think what standard mic looks like. Standard dynamic mic though, isn't it, really?
Well, that's why we use these generic ones. It's a Jesan model because I've got a Jesan 4004 chassis on my bench, and I needed to pinch a extension loudspeaker socket, and the chassis was virtually identical in the main part. So I think it's one of the lower down Jesan models.
Right, okay, fair enough then, fair enough. Yes, it might be interesting to... I mean, we've never had an issue with standard outside DMC mics, have we? At all, ever. Strange one. Yeah, but you're probably right, just drop it back on the bench just to see what it is doing.
Absolutely, that's what. Whereabouts are you? Because you're absolutely romping through now.
Yes, I'm just going to the petrol station.
So it does. This does receive very nicely once somebody's in the squelch range of it.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm going to scratch a corner, because then you can tell, and obviously at scratch a corner it doesn't work that well.
Exactly, that's the whole reason that we go out to that direction and not the other direction where we'd be 25 miles before it performed as badly.
I'd be able to talk to you at Bingham, which is a long way away. Right, I'm going to turn right into the road.
Okay, and that concludes the test. If you'd like to come back in, I'm just going to throw this on the bench and see what the deviation reads.
Okay, 10-4, I'll let you do clear for now.
Having put this back on the bench after Mark having reported the audio being quite low, I've just put it on channel 20 so we can listen on our monitor receiver. Testing 1 2 3 4 5 5 4 3 2 1 1 2 3. Of course, that does sound all right. So using the deviation meter now on the test equipment. Wallow. We're actually getting at 1 kilohertz. We're only getting about with a 1 kilohertz tone. We're only getting about 1 kilohertz of audio. If I go wallow as a test as loudly as possible, then it's exceeding 2.5, which is beyond where we want it to be. So I don't think the automatic gain control on the transmitted audio works that well on this set. As Mark says, if we can find another sample and see whether it works better. But the conclusion of that test is that the squelch, as we found with the test on the bench, the squelch is harsh, and we've found that the transmitted audio is quite low with a normal voice. This is one of those radios that might suffer. This is one of those radios that might work quite well with a power mic. I am convinced it isn't faulty, and I'm convinced this is the way these radios are. So what we'll do is to find another one of these, or one with an identical chassis. As Mark says, Europasonic 3 is one of those sets. So that concludes the Moonraker Minor Mk1 from about 1987.